the Adoption Side by Side podcast, because no one should have to walk the adoption journey alone. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Steph. We walk the journey together, and we want to walk it with you if you'll have us. On today's episode, we would like to introduce ourselves so that you have a little bit of a background of why we are doing this podcast and what is to come.
So to kick us off, I think we should talk about how we met.
I think that would be great because we weren't childhood friends, not even college friends. We met, like 2 years ago? Probably not even a whole 2 years yet.
Yep. I think at the very beginning of 2023, we got connected.
Okay.
Through a mutual friend.
Which was
a friend of a friend.
I was going to say, because I didn't even know that friend mutually. It was a coworker of mine knew that we were starting the adoption process and had told us about a friend of hers who was using the consultant group. So she put me in contact with her. And that friend of yours told me that she was like, well, we've already adopted, but here's my friend who started with that agency and would be a great person for you to talk to. And she put us together in Facebook Messenger. And that is where this beautiful friendship kind of began.
Yep. I remember we were talking about the home study process. You were starting into that fun world. We had just finished that part. So
the stress.
I'm sure that's a topic that'll come up a lot.
Oh, I'm sure. But yeah, so that's where we started. And then it took us a few months to actually even meet in person. We just did a lot of messenger talking because we had some stuff going on in our lives and you were working through the process. And it was April when we met for coffee. And what my husband thought was only going to be an hour-long coffee visit was 3 hours, I think, because we just sat there and connected and became friends that I think we're stuck with each other for life now.
I think so. I remember sitting there being like, okay, we might actually be the same person.
Right, yeah.
We were a lot alike.
100%.
But it was just so cool to have somebody that was going through the journey at the same time, because it's hard to describe to people when you're going through it. There's just so many like little things and nuances that you learn about and you walk through. So it was really cool to be able to talk about those things in real time.
Yes. And I know just because of my personality, I was so thankful that I had you and that you were a couple months ahead of us, because when something would happen, I'd be like, hey, help me out here. And you'd be like, all right, calm down. And you'd like talk me through it, or you like would give me tips and hints to get through it. So that made it really nice too. So that's why we wanted to do this podcast, so that we could be that for whoever is listening. We both now have our babies and all of that. And one day we're talking on the phone, and I can't even remember why we were having a phone conversation, because the two of us normally are texters. But for whatever reason, I was coming home from somewhere, I don't even remember where, and we were talking. And we had always been tossing around the idea of doing like a consultant group ourselves, but neither of us were sure we were ready for that, or if there was even a need for that in the adoption world. And since we loved our consultant group so much, we didn't want to take away from them. So something we kicked around, but we both knew we wanted to do something. So in that conversation, we were like, well, we could do that. And then I think you were like, or we could like update some of the adoption classes. And I went, well, that would be a good idea. I thought of that. And then I think it was you, or maybe it was me, who went, what if we did a podcast? Am I right in that? Do I have that right?
Yeah, you had it right.
And then after that, I think we were on the phone for another 45 minutes talking about how this would work, what we would do and all of that. And
I think we kept talking about, we really felt led to help others along their journey, because we kept having like friends approach us and ask us about the process. My husband and I had a couple churches that had asked us to share our story there as a testimony. And in our minds, we're like, well, maybe also to encourage someone who might be listening to also take the plunge and start their journey. So consultant group would be awesome. But when we've got our two little guys running around,
it's a lot.
That would be a lot.
It would be, And not that doing a podcast isn't, but I loved having Andrea to walk every step of the way of the adoption with us so much that we discussed that when we were walking it, I was looking for a podcast, kind of like what we're hoping this one is going to be, to walk me through the steps and through the home study, through the waiting. And I think that's really how this was born was, hey, why don't we do a podcast of our journeys walking together, but now we can walk alongside somebody else. So who we are a little bit just on the personal level. So I was a former ECE teacher of 12 years, but after my little one decided to join our family, I went back to work for a couple months and decided being a stay-at-home mom was where my heart was and where we wanted to be. So I'm currently a stay-at-home mom for over a year now and absolutely loving it. And Andrea's kind of done the same thing too.
Kind of did. I worked in same job for 12 years, administrative assistant job, and our son joined our family, and around the 6-month-old mark, I made the same decision. I was like, I just really want to be at home with my son. So that's another part of the journey we kind of got to walk through together and making that decision.
Yes. And what's funny is on my last day of work, it was June 4th, and Andrea made the connection that her last day of work had been March 4th. And our babies were both about 6 months of age because they were born close to the same day in different months. So that was funny that even our stay-at-home mom journeys were starting about the same time as our child's lives. So we're just so happy to be able to do this. Now, as you've noticed, we've just been saying about our sons. We both have sons. They are 3 months apart. Yes. Andrea's little boy is older than ours, but we, for confidentiality reasons, we will not be using their names in the podcast ever. Our names and our husband's names and others, but we're going to keep our little boys as just our little boys or sons. So, Andrea, I'm going to ask you this question. Why did you and your husband decide to adopt? What led you to this to become a bigger part of your family?
So I was trying to remember if there was like a specific time in my life I first knew I wanted to adopt, because I feel like it goes so far back. I don't really remember the origin. So as far back as I can go were you, since we're around the same age, did you grow up reading American Girl magazine?
Absolutely. I'm not sure there's a little girl in our generation that didn't read those.
I loved those magazines. I remember one coming that was about a girl, and I think I still have it somewhere. She was not super young. She's probably like preteen age. And they had adopted from another country. It was an international adoption, a girl around her same age. So it's kind of like they became sisters through international adoption. And I remember this just being so intriguing to my mind as like a kid, young teenager. I think because I was like, wonder if I could get a sister that way.
Right.
But I think that kind of eventually became more like, I would like to grow my own family that way. And my mom's parents, so my grandfather, my grandmother, had taken in foster babies. So I kind of had heard about that and knew about that realm of adoption. And I don't know, it's always been something I've known I wanted to do. I don't even sure I have an explanation for it other than God put it on my heart. So then I went through the time of my life where I was that super angsty teenager who said, all men are stupid and I will never be getting married. So I'm like, I need to start planning to be a single adoptive mom. And I remember like buying myself a notebook. I'm like, I'm going to start like writing down how to like save all my money for this.
Oh, wow. So you were like full on serious about this.
It was a plan in my little feeble mind. I was looking up like what agency I wanted to go through. I was talking with a friend who had adopted. However, God had another plan for me, which was he sent me a cute ginger husband, Bryson. So he was willing to walk along that with me. So in the end, I think what really made the decision was that I have type 1 diabetes. It's super erratic. It just would have made pregnancy very difficult for me or a baby. So probably should try this route, see what happens. And I'll share a little bit more about that. I do the episode of our personal stories. Right. But so how about you? What led you and your husband to decide to adopt?
So as an only child, I grew up just me. So it was always, how can I make my family when I'm older bigger than what maybe it can be biologically? So, every little girl's dream is to be a mom. And that starts at a very early age because we just have that motherly instinct with our baby dolls and our Barbies and all of that. So
I never had that with baby dolls. I did stuffed animals.
That's fair. I mean, you still had it. So, but I had the whole thing, I had the baby dolls with the high chairs, the strollers, but it was hard because, I had to play by myself. So, couldn't wait to have somebody to play with. So I always wanted that for my own children. I wanted at least 2 so that they had somebody to play with. I was diagnosed with endometriosis, unfortunately, in 2017, right around the age of 27. And what's funny with that is I had just met Alex, but we were friends. Like he had just started working at the center I was working at the time. And I went missing for 6 weeks. And he was asking people, like, where did Steph go? Like, she was here and now she's not. And they were like, well, she had surgery, so she's off, healing and all of that. And with that diagnosis came the realization from the doctor that was heartbreaking, that I probably would never be able to have biological children. And so I had to get through that process myself. And after my surgery, when I woke up, I was not surprised at all when my doctor shared with me that he had to remove one of my ovaries and the other one was severely damaged. So it kind of sealed it that biological children probably was not going to happen for me. So fast forward almost a year, which thinking about that, that's funny that how that worked. Alex and I became closer as a friend, and then we were dating. And I can tell you in the 3 years of dating that I wanted to break up with him numerous times because I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to give him the family he deserved. And he just kept telling me that, Steph, that's not a big deal to me. I love you for you, not for what can be in the future. So we did get married. And about a year in, we had the conversation of how do we want to proceed with a family. We could have done IVF, but there was a laundry list of tests that I was going to have to go through. And one day Alex looked at me and he went, it's ultimately your choice because you're the one that has to go through all those tests. And I said, I understand that, but I need to know what your heart is saying. I said, I kind of know where mine is, but I need to know where yours is because I don't want to not be able to give you what you want at the same time. And he looked at me and he said, at the end of the day, I don't want to watch you go through all of that just for us to get the outcome of we're not able to have a biological child. I'd rather just put our time, our resources and all of that towards adoption. And I said, thank God, because that's exactly where I'm at. Because we all know IVF is extremely expensive. Not that adoption isn't, because they both are. But for us and where we were, we felt that adoption was the route for us. So we decided that. And then from there, we just kind of hit the ground running in a sense with how we were going to go about the process. And then our friend put us in contact with Journey Adoption Consultants. And here we are almost 2 years later, or I guess it's been 2 years since we started that part of the journey. And so that's why we adopted, just because biological wasn't possibly in our cards. So we've been surely blessed though with our little guy. And I know Andrea has too with her little guy.
Absolutely.
They're just the greatest little humans.
We think they're pretty perfect, but we might be a little biased.
Just a little, yeah.
So why did you decide to use a consultant versus using an agency?
I'm not even sure I can honestly answer that thinking about it because I don't know. We did know that we wanted to maybe adopt not in PA because of the adoption laws here. So our friend put us in contact with this consultant group. This is probably how we picked them, actually. They told us how they do it. And, they work with these certain states that are, and the terminology is adoption friendly. We know everybody doesn't love that terminology. Sometimes we struggle with, do we love it? But it's just what it is. Adoption friendly means that the consent for the mother and the father, the birth parents, they sign over in a shorter amount of time. So that's normally 24 to 72 hours, where some places it's a month, some places it's 6 months. So the states we were going to be working with had that shorter amount of time. And we felt a little bit more comfortable with that. We felt comfortable having somebody that was going to walk beside us every single step of the way. I mean, literally every step of the way. It helped us with the home study, with classes, with clearances, with cases. I mean, our consultant was there if we needed to talk to her, bounce things off. Should we do this one? Should we not do that one? And then even after we met, she was still there. And even to this day, we can text her and be like, hey, I have a question. Or, hey, this is what's going on in our lives. We just wanted to share with you. So we didn't really just come out and be like, oh, we're going to do a consultant. It was kind of, I would say it was a God thing that he just kind of placed it like, they're going to need help with this. So I'm just going to give them this. And it was perfect for us. So, but what about you and Bryson?
I think that's kind of similar because I think I didn't even really quite realize the world of like private infant adoption existed. Like I was very aware of international adoption or adoption through the foster care system, especially of older children. And I think I just never really knew it was possible. Like I had this misconception. You go on a wait list for years and you never know if you're going to be able to just adopt a child instead of like, for example, maybe in foster care, you might foster a child hoping to adopt, but then they go back to their family.
Reunification, yes.
And that can be a lengthy process where the child's in your home a long time. And that was something that, I mean, I love families that are able to do that. We were not sure we were in the place emotionally to handle that. So when I saw a friend of ours that was adopting, she had mentioned this consultant group, and I kind of talked with her about that, and really just talking with the consultant group kind of launched us into that world. And so I really don't think I looked around from that. Like, I really loved what they were doing. Yeah. And I think that especially for a family that is adopting for the first time, it's really, really valuable to have a person who can walk with you alongside.
And who's done it to themselves.
Yes,
twice
exactly.
in our case, because we had the same consultant. She'd done it twice.
Yes.
So she knew.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely think that, like you said, it was a God thing that group was put there, you know, in front of us at that time.
Right.
Just from seeing, you know, a friend posting about it. So, and I think we'll probably in future episodes kind of be talking about some of the differences between working with a consultant versus working with agencies. And so we'll get more into that later. But yeah, I think for us, it was a God thing to
absolutely. Yeah. You know, he works in those mysterious ways that looking back on it, I'm like, oh, wait, we didn't think about it. It just came because he gave it to us.
I think that, our particular consultant group, just when you saw their material, you felt like it was a good place to be. Like it felt very welcoming. It felt like they were making the process understandable. Whereas if you had just maybe gone to an agency's website, not saying they don't make it understandable, but it just was maybe a little less personable when you first
it's more cut and dry.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So this is kind of an easy question. What was the easiest part about that whole adoption journey for you? And then I'm going to spin it. What was the hardest part?
I think probably the easiest part for us was, this might sound odd, but just kind of the getting started with the community around us, because everybody was very supportive. They kind of all jumped on the fundraising bandwagon, were so helpful and encouraging. And it kind of gave us, I think, the courage to pursue it.
Okay.
Because I would say the hardest part of the journey was probably just my own mental struggle of, even beyond the adoption, will I be a good mom? I had a lot of like questions of myself, and can I do this? Can we really walk through this journey? What if it goes on for years? Like there's a lot of, I think we're the same way in this. We like to know and have answers. Is that a fair statement?
It sure is. And with God, you never have the answers.
You don't.
Readily.
You don't. So it definitely is like that leap of faith.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I'm going to trust that something's going to come of this, or if it does not, that's what was meant to be. But I think the uncertainty was something I just had to kind of grapple with throughout the process. But so.
I'd say for me, and this is probably going to blow people's minds, the easiest part for me was once we were live to see cases, that waiting period. You know, most people pray for patience or say, I'm learning patience through this. That little time period that we had, because it wasn't a very long window for us. Praise God for that, because that probably would have driven me crazy. And I wouldn't be saying it was my easiest part, but knowing that like I was seeing these cases and we were saying yes to them. And even when we said no, I was okay with it. I always had peace, because I knew in my heart that even if this yes came back as a no, that there was a baby coming for me. Like there was a baby God had planned. He would not have put us on this path and put us with this consultant group and like all the things leading into it. I knew a baby was coming. It was just a matter of the perfect baby at the perfect time for us. So from June to December for us, when our little man was born and placed in our arms, was probably the easiest part of the journey. I can't say the whole thing because there were always blips in there that made it hard, but just that piece of knowing that I was going to be a mom at the end of it. And then this is another one that probably isn't common for most, but for me, the hardest part of our adoption journey was at the end when our little guy was ours. We had finalized and trying to get his birth certificate. Let me tell you, from the day we finalized until I got the birth certificate, I kid you not, it was probably 10 months. Does that sound about right? It was a while. We hit hiccup after hiccup after hiccup with that we'll talk more about whenever we get to like that finalization stage. with our podcast series. But that was hard for me because I was like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. I'm filling this stuff out right. Learned that a couple times I didn't, but why wasn't it coming in? And then, of course, always just the mental state too. You know, I could get in my head at times and worried. And then there was that, you know, that whole, I'm just going to walk into a hospital. They're going to hand me a baby and I'm going to walk out with it. Like, we sure that's okay? And it was great. So
I think something that probably helped both of us was that we have husbands that were like
so grounded. Alex and I talk about that all the time. Like just the other day, I was like, a different friend couple, I was like, he mellows her out just like you mellow me out. And he does. Like I can be on cloud 49 and I only need to be on cloud 2 and he pulls me back down and grounds me and is like, it's going to be okay. And again, I have to say that was God being like, she's a little bit crazy. We need to give her somebody that can mellow her out from time to time. So through that, I mean, we had our easiest, we had our hardest, but what was your absolute favorite part of the whole journey? Like any part of it, start to finish?
I think that, I mean, probably the obvious answer is, of course, going to be like the day that we met our son.
Yes.
And just being able to have some moments to connect with his birth parents. And it's a very humbling experience. I would say, because I mean, that was a very obvious answer, but in the journey leading up to that, I think one of my favorite parts would just be seeing the cases that would come through with information on the expectant moms and the children, because it was both wonderful and heartbreaking.
Yes.
Because you really got to see some snippets of their story. Some agencies provide more details than others. There were some that were just so heartbreaking. To say favorite, I don't want to say like I celebrate that but I felt honored to be invited into that space with that family, if that makes sense. Like just to be able to share, even if it was just sharing their story for a brief time, to be able to pray for them, to be able to, you know, hold them in your heart as you think about them and pray for them and the decision they're making was really special.
We're 2 years out from that, both of us, from seeing those cases. And there's still cases that pop up in my brain.
Absolutely.
And I think about them. And I catch myself, I stop and I pray for them because I'm sure that baby found a match because, you know, they usually do. But there were some very hard cases that we both saw. And there was one case that sticks out in my mind constantly. And I do wonder, did that little one find their forever family? Just because of what was going on in her little life at such a young age of weeks old. My favorite part, obviously, too, was the day that we met our little guy, when he was wheeled into the hospital room and I looked down on his little face and just started bawling my eyes out, and then turned to see my husband, who is a very composed man with the tears in his eyes as well. But I can also say that I enjoyed our coming home day to our family and our friends. We had a longer stay whenever we did our adoption out in the state, and we'll talk about that more in my personal story, but finally being able to come home after that time away and placing our baby in my mother's arms. She's crying, I'm crying, like the tears are flowing. And then when we went to my husband's family and he handed our son to his mom and she went, you all can go eat now. I'm going to sit here and count his fingers and his toes. I know they're there, but I want to count them myself. And she sat down on the couch and took his clothes off to count his 10 toes. We had shown them to her numerous times, but she wanted to have that connection period. And just watching their faces light up. Because for us, it was always a question, it wasn't a question of, we knew everybody would love the baby. Like that baby is ours. But you do have that fear of, how welcoming is everybody going to be? And each new person that met our son, we saw the love shine. So there's no question whatsoever that our child wasn't going to be loved.
Absolutely.
So that is something that I will hold near and dear to my heart because you just never know. I mean, you just never know.
Yeah. I know we had, I'll say a family member in case they don't want me to say who, but I remember a close family member who, I mean, of course, was supportive of adoption, had experienced others in their lives, you know, doing adoption or foster care, but had said to me post bringing our son home, you know, I guess I had always wondered what that connection would be like. Like, would I feel that way? And they were like, absolutely. And I think that for some reason, I never like had that fear. Maybe I should have. I don't know. I think just because from such a young age, I thought I wanted to adopt. But I know other people around me did. And being able to see like, I think for me, because I had so much like doubt of myself being a mom, I would have had that with a biological child too. So it was more like this, like, just, are we going to bond, period? And it does all go away.
It doesn't. I did fear that bonding. That was something that I had thought about because of the classes we took.
Right.
So that was a concern for me. But as much as it was a concern, I don't think I let it get to me too much because I had it always in the back of my mind. My best friend had babies, and I remember the first time seeing all three of them.
Right.
The love that I had for them. They weren't my blood. They, like the only tie I had to them was that their mother was my childhood, infancy best friend that carried through life.
Yeah.
But I did have that worry that, am I going to bond? But the minute I saw the picture that they sent me when he was born, because we weren't there when our sons were born. So the minute that they sent me that picture, I had that instant connection and love. But that's not the case for every single mom and father, because there is that bonding experience that needs to be done. And then you have that fear, is the baby going to bond back with me? Or is there going to be that stress of they've bonded with the birth mom for 9 months? Now we have to bond with them. And so, that was a little scary, but I think
we were fortunate to have had such a positive experience that way, because it's true. Like, some don't, and that's okay. I mean, everyone's story will say a lot.
Some birth parents have that sometimes.
Absolutely. Yes. And just especially like when you give birth and you have postpartum, like all kinds of stuff can happen that, but it doesn't make anyone less of a family. I think we are just very thankful that we were able to feel that pretty quickly in our experience.
Absolutely.
I don't know if if you feel like maybe, to me, I feel like this helps a little bit because Stephanie mentioned she's an only child. I'm an only child. Just another way we're alike. And I feel like we take our friendships very seriously and they kind of become our like sisters in a way. Yeah. So I feel like we kind of have that almost like we're making a family mentality.
Yes.
I feel like that helped me a lot. Yeah.
I agree.
So here's the $1 million question.
Oh, yes. Okay, let's hear it.
All right. Would you adopt again? And if you did, would you use a consultant again or go just with an agency?
So that's a question that I'm not going to lie. People ask you literally when you land on your newborn. And I know that happens for everybody. So yes, my husband and I do plan to adopt again. We're actually talking about it right now when we're going to start that process again. We don't want our children to be too far apart in age, but we don't want to rush it either. We're enjoying our son so much that we always talked about maybe starting it once he was 2, but now we're like, maybe we'll wait till he's 2.5 because we're loving all the things. Yeah. But we also know that it's in our hearts that our family is not done with just him. We want him to have that sibling and all of the things. So we've also kicked around would we do a consultant again to have that support and then to have the multiple agencies, or do we just sign up for 1 or 2 agencies? We absolutely loved our agency. So that's definitely an agency we want to work with again. But if we sign up with our consultant, they should still be working together. So we'd be with them anyways. So after kicking it around and kind of like not doing the financial side of it, but looking at it a little bit, and actually Andrea and I had this conversation, and this is where I was like, oh, it's about the same. Yes, we probably would use a consultant again because we loved our consultant so much. They did so much for us. You paid a price and everything was included. The profile book, the classes, the help. You got to see, 5 states plus with the agencies that you're matched with. So yes, we will be adopting again. Yes, we will be using a consultant again. And to answer the why are you not just fostering to adopt question, because that's typically what follows that. We just want to do the process from start to finish again with a newborn. And we have nothing against foster to adopt. We have always said that if we feel that we're led to have a 3rd child, that we would do that. Alex's youngest sister is actually a foster to adopt child. So we love her. We love that whole experience for our family for that. So that is an option for us. But right now we are leaning towards we are going to adopt and then move on from there. So Andrea, bouncing it back to you. Are you guys going to adopt again, and would you use a consultant?
So Bryce and I also, like Stephanie and Alex, have bounced around. When do we want to adopt again if we're going to do this again? I feel like we're a little less ready to take the plunge again. Not on the adoption side, just on can I handle 2 young children? So I think that we hope to adopt again. It's just kind of a matter of timing and thinking about that. But we did really have a positive experience. So in that end, yes. Bryce and I both are only children. So we've kind of been talking recently, like we've always said we want our child to have a sibling because we didn't. And now we're like, growing up as only children wasn't bad. If you have 2 kids, what happens? How do you love both of them? How do you referee sibling fights? We don't know how to do any of this. So it would be definitely a whole new world and experience. Right. But it's something like I think that we hope to do. We're just kind of praying about the timing. Okay. And probably if we adopted again, I would say at this stage, because we have already adopted once, we would probably go with one agency, the agency we ended up using. They actually, and again, more in our personal side story, but this agency was recommended by our consultant, but is not partnered with them, meaning the agency does not send cases to the consultant. You have to sign on with them separately. Okay. So because of that, I think we may consider just doing that to start. But if if the process was moving a little slower this time, we may decide to go back with a consultant, with our same consultant. So
because we love our consultant.
We do.
She's part of the family.
Yeah. So I guess stay tuned for our continuing adoption stories.
Yes, because they're never finished.
Everyone, thanks for joining us today for our first episode, our Get to Know You episode, and our why we're doing what we're doing. We wanted to share with you a few topics that will be upcoming in future episodes. So stay tuned for those. We're going to be sharing our personal adoption stories, or as much of them as we can share publicly. We're going to be talking in depth about different parts of the private adoption process, agencies, consultants. We are having our favorite consultant on here, so that will be a fun interview. We're going to be talking about the dreaded home study.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And we're hopefully having on our caseworkers who did our home studies. So
we love them and they love us.
Yes. And they helped not make it so stressful. Yes. Very important. We're going to talk about fundraising, grants, ways to help pay for adoption, because as I'm sure will come up a lot, private adoption is unfortunately expensive. So talk about how to hopefully make that as easy as possible on both your mental energy and your pocketbooks. Yes. So just kind of walk through all the different parts, including kind of what it looks like when you go to the hospital, what the finalization process looks like, all the fun paperwork, like getting your birth certificate, because that's so fun. And we also really hope to share different perspectives on adoption. We're going to have our husbands on here. Not sure if we've told both of them that yet or not.
I can't remember if I told Alex or not.
Kind of get the guy perspective. We're also going to be talking with a friend of mine who is a birth mom who has placed a child for adoption and is willing to talk about adoption from her perspective. We also really hope to talk about the foster care system as well, and how you can adopt through that process, or even just start with the intention of just fostering and being a home to children in need. So those are all things we kind of hope to do coming up.
All right. Well, let's close out in prayer. So, dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this time that we were able to share a little bit of our stories, and that you put it on our hearts to do this podcast so that we can walk alongside other moms, dads, and families that are going through the adoption process, no matter where they are at in that process. And we just pray that you would be with each person as they start their journey and keep us all safe. We thank you so much for this, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, we thank you for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed today's episode and come back for our future ones.
You can find us on Instagram. We're just at Adoption Side by Side. Check us out on there. We'll kind of be sharing the release dates of future episodes and topics. So we hope you'll join us. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.